Jessica, hi. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. To start, Jessica, I have to ask you this question. You're a published author. This Bring the Joy book, which I read, this is the topic of our conversation today. I've heard you on podcasts. You're a traveling speaker. You're a mom. You have a lot on your plate. So my question to you is, given your work around families and educators, how in the world do you keep up your energy? You're positive, you're always glowing. What's your secret? How do you keep it going?
Okay, well, the glowing part comes from some very good skincare, medical grade skincare. I mean, let's just be honest, a little Botox, keep the wrinkles out. And then the energy piece, I get asked this question often, and I wish I had a better answer. However, I think part of it is just naturally how I'm wired. Like,
Hmm.
when you meet some people and they're just like the calm, cool cucumber, and you kind of need them, like you need that calm, cool energy. I am not that person. Now, I can be when needed, but like you bring me in to like rally up the troops. You bring me in to like pump people up. You bring me in to like, let's bring out our best. And part of that, I think, is I don't care what other people think. So I'm not trying to fit in. I've learned to be my most authentic version of myself. I take really, really good care of myself in the business that I'm in. I'm a keynote speaker, so I'm giving energy to audiences. I'm also holding energy for audiences, and I do this in my coaching practice. So if my energy is not good, imagine like what it would be on the other side of that. And Ryan Leake, one of my favorite speakers, asked the question of like, what's it like to be on the other side of you? And
Hmm.
that question, when I read it a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, I want people to be like, oh, it's fun, it's energetic, it's joyful, it's like inspiring, uplifting. And so I go in with that mindset. And then the piece of like to do the work that I do and keep the energy, sleep is super important. I don't need a lot of it. I'm probably one of the odd ducks. Like my husband, that man needs like 8 or 9 hours. And for me, it's a good night's sleep. It's a great mindset. It's filling up my cup. And then, I mean, I'm finishing a green juice. I have my vitamins. And then I'm really conscious about fueling my body. So what goes in is like will feed my output. And then to juggle all of it, I ask for a lot of help and I have a lot of help. So we have a house manager slash nanny. She's like a big older sister who kind of manages all of that, which is amazing. My husband is super involved and he is home more than I am. And then I have a great team. I have a partner and business manager. And so none of this is done on my own. And I'm not afraid to ask for help and be like, I'm at my wit's end. I'm about to combust. I gotta, or have to be like, you know what? I don't have capacity. I'm going to let that go. So this has been a practice and it is taken me many years and it's a wild ride, but it's been really fun.
And I think even as educators, therapists, and parents listening to this, they can see themselves in that story as well. You don't have to be a keynote speaker to take what you said, to look after your physical health, look after the logistics of your classroom or your home. But
Mhm.
also, what I found interesting about your book is you talk a lot about your spiritual growth as well. So it's really the brain science that
I
that was really, I think, a turning point for you, right? So can you speak more about how do you keep your mind? Because you've been through some tough times. I don't know if you want to share that, but
mhm.
it's been a rough
Oh, I
journey.
can share.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's the piece. So I lost my father-in-law 2 years before we lost our son. So it was like, and I don't know if I can swear on here, but it was like a double like shitstorm. Like, we're just like, and before that, right before that, we had this $18,000 plumbing bill. We're living paycheck to paycheck. Like, when things are stacking up and our marriage was on the rocks, like it was just one hard thing after the next. And I remember my husband was like, we're doomed. Like, we're not meant, these are signs. Like, we're not meant to be together. Like, we should just throw in the towel. And now I look to where we're at. We've been together for 16 years, married for 13. We're both like, oh gosh, I'm so glad we didn't quit. And when you talk about managing energy, and I thought about it in the context of like an educator, a parent, someone is in this role of serving other people. The biggest thing is like, and people might say, oh, well, I can't afford a nanny or a house manager. And it's like, hey, fair, fair, fair. But the number one thing that I've done is if you want to increase your wealth, you increase your health. And I'm not
Mhm.
just talking wealth as in a financial, like monetary sense. I'm talking about the overall wellness and richness of your life. And that is managing your mind. And when I started learning how to manage my mind, because I'm somebody that had attempted suicide in grade 11, was in a really, really dark, heavy spot that would ebb and flow in these like, I'm on mountaintops, I'm in the depths of despair. Everything is great. So then you're like, am I bipolar? What is this? And I've done a lot of work in that psychology space for myself of understanding my blueprint. What is it that I need? I also found I was neurodivergent. So I was like, oh, this makes sense with the ADHD of the high highs are high, but the low lows are low. And what I started to look in that was managing my mind has to be one of my top priorities. Part of that is exercise. Part of that is just some journaling work. And part of that is knowing that if you have thoughts in your head, those thoughts don't have to be your entire life. We're all have this neuroplasticity. We all have the ability to change our default settings. And when I started doing that work, I was like, oh, I can know that if I fail or I mess up and I miss the mark, that doesn't need to derail me for 6 months anymore. That can derail me for a day. Sometimes it's a week. I hate when it's that long, but this sometimes you guys sit in the suck. And so I've done a lot of work around my limiting beliefs. Like the number one thing I hear when people say, I don't have time to take care of myself. I was like, well, let me know how that thought is working out for you. Because as I'm looking right now, and as you're telling me, it's not serving you. And so when people tell themselves, your brain is looking for the evidence of what's working and will be like, see, I told you so. And so I nicknamed my brain Larry. This has been one of the biggest life hacks of my life. I don't know why it became Larry, but it's Larry. And Larry will be like, oh, you're so stupid. You couldn't do that. And so then now you're like, my therapist, God bless Christy, we love her. Christy's like, you're not every thought that you think. And I was like, poof. I was like, what do you mean, Christy? I'm not every thought. She goes, they're just thoughts. Because I was sitting in her office and I was beating myself up of like, why do I keep having this thought? Like I thought she's like, Jess, it's just a thought. She goes, you're the thinker. And so then as a thinker, you get to choose, is this something that's going to serve me and propel me to my goals? Or is this going to be the thing that holds me back? And I always say powerful thoughts lead to powerful actions. And that has been the greatest unlock. So for me, when I'm like, I don't have time to work out, it's like, well, you kind of don't have time not to because you know you're going to feel like shit. So it's like, get going. And the thought of like, well, I don't have an hour to go to the gym. Fine, do 15 minutes. You have a trampoline, you have all these fun things. Like, go do like running around the bases with your kids. Go do 15 minutes of squats, 5 minutes of push ups, and grab some lightweight arms while you watch something. Like, there's excuses and there's solutions, and I love to focus on the solutions.
Right. And that's the thing too, when you look at the system of like from an educator point of view, right? Where you're or a parent who's working full time and then comes home. So, generally speaking, it's a full day. And I know as a teacher sub, when I come home, I'm exhausted. So I
Oh,
get it. I'm in the shoes of educators too. And even when you're exhausted, and I sometimes have to go into a room with like an eye pillow just to have like sensory withdrawal because it's so crazy. But even then, getting up and even like you said, stretching or doing yoga, moving your body, it
mhm.
doesn't have to go run a marathon,
No.
just like you said, that accessibility, go for a walk or move your body in a way that just feels good. Even the yoga stretching, it changes your whole outlook. And so I think that's what I'm hearing from you is meet yourself where you're at. Keep
Mhm.
it simple. Like a few minutes every day is better than like a huge CrossFit on a weekend, for example, right?
Totally. And that's where my thought process for so long was is like if I couldn't get to the gym, then I couldn't be active or it didn't count. It wouldn't do it. And now there's all this science and data around the 10,000 steps and da da da. And I think it's great because like I looked yesterday and as I was going to bed and I had 5,600 steps. It was a travel day and I had a lot of meetings. And so I was stuck on a plane and then I was stuck sitting on calls. For me, I don't tell myself a story like I used to be like, oh, you should go out and do something and do that. No, it was 11:45 at night. I was like, my body needs sleep. I'm gonna go to bed. And it was like, okay, girl, now you got to be a little bit more active. I also knew I was going skating this morning. I started taking skating lessons. I'm in
Oh.
Canada, and my little guy, he's 7, and he's like, Mom, you're not very good hockey skater. I was like, so I will just find a performance skating coach and I will learn how to skate. And it's been the funnest, best thing because as adults, we also tell ourselves a story. I don't have time to learn a new skill. I'm serving everybody else. I'm giving to everybody else, but I'm actually better for it. So if you can do
Mm.
the things, and I find when you make the investment and you take the time, you're able to do the skills that you normally do, but in a way more efficient manner because you have more
Mhm.
energy, you have more clarity, you're not dealing with brain fog. And then the things that maybe took twice or three times as long, you're not caught up in that because you are fueled and charged.
Right. I love it. So now how does this relate to children? So I know you've spoken with groups of children as well. How do you bring this joyful blueprint to kiddos?
Honestly, I think the kiddos are the ones that are bringing the joy, and we as adults are the one that are dampening the dang joy. Like if I'm being honest, and I found this study, and it's been on my mind. So now you're probably the final push that I have to go back and find it. But it said it was like around, I want to say grade 6 or 7 is when kids really start to care, maybe even grade 5, about what other kids think about them. Because if you think about kids in kindergarten and grade 1, they're silly, they're not thinking about it, they're like wearing mismatched stuff and they're just like living their best life. And then there becomes this point when we start to become so concerned with what everybody else thinks of us. Even my daughter, like I'm seeing it in real time. I was like, what do you mean I can't kiss you and hug you and love on you? Right. As at school drop off, Mom, people are going to see. I think what happens is like it's maybe not the kids that are losing the joy, it's the adults who are don't be too much. I was told that my whole life, don't be too much. You like because it's like, wow, that's so loud, you're so in, but that was my personality. No
Mhm.
fault to my mom or dad. I mean, they were I wanted to be a kind, nice kid that was generous and let other people. I was very, some people call it bossy or assertive, whatever you want to say. But I think we started to tell kids a story. And I wonder if we enhanced their creativity in the way they did it, that kids wouldn't necessarily need to change much, but they could do more of what they did when they were younger.
Yeah. All right. So let's think about the classroom, right? Or in a clinic at school. So in the
Yeah.
classroom, how do we bring more joy? The
Mm.
children might be coming, but they can sense. I mean, I hear at the beginning you said it's so important that we
Hmm.
cleanse ourselves energetically,
Yeah.
spiritually, physically, and all that, right? And so you're coming to the classroom. You may have heard some terrible news or something heavy's going on, or the school administration. I mean, a
Yeah.
laundry list, right, of things that are life is hard right now. I think we can agree on that, right?
Yeah.
However, there's still sunshine to be had, right?
Hmm.
And so how talk us through like what are some of your ideas of how to create this joyful classroom where children are ready to learn and they want to be there?
So I love this question. And I got asked this question a while ago, and it was more like, what do we, the suggestion was at the end of the day. And I don't know necessarily if it matters. Maybe it's throughout the day, but especially if you're in a funk, where you're seeing all the bad. Maybe it's that like you as a teacher have come in and you've got three parents breathing down your neck, and maybe you're in a younger classroom and someone forgot their lunch and this person pooped their pants. Like, I mean, you name it, they've faced it all. I just want to say to people that are serving in the education world, I've done only a couple hours in my daughter's classroom and my son's classroom, and I'm like, I don't know how you do this all day, every day. Like you are wired to give and serve, and it's such a noble calling because it's really, really hard. And you're holding energy for anywhere from 15 to 30 kids. And your responsibility is to be the one that sets the tone for what comes in. And one of the things that I love, and this is about training your brain and the neuroplasticity, but I talk about building evidence banks. And what if we built an evidence bank of joy? And we actually have been doing some work with a lot of teachers and school divisions, and these school divisions are now adopting joy boards. And so they're trying to catch their students, they're trying to catch staff members in the process of there's more joy and building an evidence bank. Because what happens is when we build an evidence bank, we are wiring our brain to look for the joy. And the more joy you get, the more you bring. So one of the simple questions is like, what's bringing you joy today? And I think depending on the age of the classroom, it maybe depends on the conversation. Whether they're sticky notes, whether it's going in a jar, whether it's going up on the board, these are the things, but you're training your brain to start to look for that. And it's really a gratitude practice on steroids. And so often, especially as adults, we'll loop in all the things that aren't working when we go to bed. You run the laundry list of like, oh, I forgot to send this. I forgot to do that. Who's going to pick up the dry cleaning? Oh my gosh, is it polka dot day tomorrow? And so we're beating ourselves up and then we're trying to go to bed and trying to rest. It's like imagine if your last thought at night was, what worked today? Oh, it felt so good. I was able to buy somebody a coffee. Oh my gosh, this little kid in the class, he came to me and told me this funny story about how I helped him read and now he's showing his mom this thing at home. And he was so excited to tell me, you got to bank the evidence. And that evidence bank gives you the belief. So when you're in a hard spot, you're like, oh man, this was hard, but I have evidence that I've made it through. This was hard, but I have evidence I've navigated. It's a little bit different, but I have the evidence to keep going. And so build a joy board, build a joy jar, build joy into your practice. And then I would always say in classrooms, I don't think we move enough. I think it's a lost art. We're telling people to sit still in this position. We have neurodivergent kids everywhere. And it's like, how do you learn when you're like basically feeling like you're handcuffed? And that's not the effect. I learn by doing, by experiencing, by trying it out. So how can we incorporate more movement? I remember the days when you got to go outside. It's like everyone grab your stuff. We're doing this lesson outside. And I think stop doing it a cookie cutter way just because it's always been done that way. Be the one that blazes a new trail. And maybe there'll be resistance, but if you show them the evidence that it works, you'll be able to do more of it.
I love this so much. So you're talking about in the classroom, what we can do is have little moments of movement. So it could be
Yeah.
movement breaks. Again, it doesn't have to be completely redoing your curriculum. These are like 1 minute, 2 minute opportunities to practice a yoga posture, for example, or
Hmm.
just squat. Or, I mean, the thing is, it affects the teacher. I'll do that sometimes too, where I think I need to just do some quick running in the spot or whatever, so I get the children to do it. And I feel better because I need a bit of an energy boost, right? So it
There's
helps
new
everybody.
there's new science and data saying that like squats are more effective than walking. And so like just how it works the full body. So I'm like, what if you did squat breaks and maybe everyone in the class, like they pick the exercise and you do 30 reps of it or 20 reps of it. And every day someone can come up with a new move, like as if people love that stuff. They love
Yeah.
getting involved and being creative. And so it gives kids a chance. Maybe it's that every day you pick a new song. And then, like, everyone has a different fun song to listen to. There's just so many simple ways that don't cost anything, but can shift the energy.
Yeah, I love that. And you were talking about journaling yourself. And I feel like that is something that could be very powerful too. It might just be journaling or doodling, but to going back to your idea of Larry, I
Mm,
think, if we sit there for a second, really understanding the difference. I'm reading a book called The Power of the Subconscious Mind. And so
mm,
it's that when you have a thought, the 3 seconds, right? So the 3 seconds later, Larry comes in and hijacks. But if
yeah.
you can act on whatever it is right away, that inspired action right away, without listening then to all the downtrodden negative thoughts of Larry, right? And
Mhm.
same with kiddos, right? They're going to have that same negative wiring. But if you're bringing in that joy that you talked about, did children ask you what joy means? Is there a definition you share with them?
I've never been asked that.
Huh.
And part of this, I'm working on my second book, and my husband and I were talking about the difference between joy and happiness. And I wish I had this like tight, buttoned up answer, but really what we were talking about is joy is not circumstantial. Joy becomes a posture. And so, how's that your posture where it's like it's coming from the inside? It's not about, I had a great day. Like when people meet me, it doesn't matter that I just got a tough phone call or I lost a deal or things are not going as I had planned. It's like I want them to meet me and they're like, oh, she has just got joy in her soul. And that we're
Mm,
spiraling up towards that, not being like, I'm really happy today. I don't even know if I would say joy is an emotion. I think joy is a posture. It's how you
mm,
show up in that. The last thing I wanted to say, which has been powerful, my little guy, he's 7, bless his soul. He's hilarious and funny and crazy, but he went through a really hard time last year where and I've never shared this story publicly, and I don't think anyone's going to call me like, so I hear you're scared of jail. But for some crazy reason, he got really scared of jail. And he was scared that he was going to be taken away by the cops and go into jail and never see us again. And I hadn't threatened, like, if you do this, you're going to go to jail. So we had no idea where it came from. I don't know if it was from a book or a movie or something. But he got so scared at night that we started a journal with him. And in the journal, we said, here, buddy. And he couldn't write like very well. He's 6. And so he's still figuring out letters. And and so we said, you tell us all the thoughts that your Larry's giving you. And let's put them in the journal. And then when we close the journal, they stay there and you don't have to take them with you.
mm.
And we had to do quite a bit of that. But now we don't do it every night. But now he goes, Mom, we got a journal. I go, okay, what do you want to talk about, buddy? And so what if you have that practice with kids? Hey, or did we have a tough day? Did anyone have some tough stuff? Or you can write a journal of the good, but it's like the journal process for us was to put it in there and to not carry it with you. And so that was a safe space to store that and then to let it go and not keep that loop going. And that seemed to really work for our son. And so if anyone's struggling or has kiddos struggling, that's a powerful thing. And maybe it's just taking the kids in a classroom saying, hey, do you want to tell me all the crazy thoughts? And you're not meeting with, don't think that. Oh, that's not true. You're just listening and saying, oh man, that must be so tough. Oh man, that would be scary. And after they get it out, you can say, I just want you to know that I see you in this. I just want to let you know that, like, here's what we know is true. And it was a really powerful practice for my son.
And that speaks to this idea of gaining emotional regulation skills, right? And you're giving him a practice for life in which he's now given permission to feel. He's not being made bad and wrong for feeling this way.
Yeah, don't feel that way. Yeah.
Right. But also it's allowing because what we see in the classroom, we see the tip of the iceberg, right? We only see what's happening, their
Yes.
explosions or their behaviors or not following the plan, the group plan, or being unexpected. But
Mhm.
what's underneath that is your son. If you had not addressed it with him and talked to him about it, he might have been in a classroom
Mhm.
behaving not on plan. And if teachers didn't know what was going on underneath it, or he didn't have a way in which to express those
Mhm.
worries and fears, you know what I mean? So I think that's the beautiful thing of what you're talking about here is allowing students to feel their emotions, giving them a practical way of both addressing what they are feeling and then choosing joy,
Mhm.
choosing something different.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I think often we were told don't feel that way, but the science behind it is it takes 90 seconds to 5 minutes to process an emotion. So you're allowed to be mad. You're also allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to be embarrassed. But the key is not staying in that emotion if it's not something that will serve you long term.
Yeah, amazing. So what are some of your practical takeaways you would give when you're speaking to educators or parents? Sort of how you talked about some of your strategies, but what are your looking at your book, your story, how do we get
One of
to bring
my
more joy?
Yeah, one of my favorite things is like we don't choose the circumstances. I don't think you always choose the classroom, you don't choose the assignment, you definitely don't choose the parents, you don't choose the principal, you don't choose leadership, you don't choose the curriculum sometimes. So when there's so much that's out of your control, often I know the story is like, well, if I could just do it this way, or if this would just change, then it would get better. And people are waiting for it to get better or for the circumstances to change. And sometimes the circumstances just aren't going to change. Like my kid died. He died in my arms at almost 6 months old. And the story is like that circumstance hasn't changed for me. It's the same. And the circumstance is like an arguable fact. So the crazy part is if it's an arguable fact, we always talk about this, but you have a choice in your response. And so
Mm,
that's the powerful piece. And I think that is really true because where I live, we had a teacher strike. That was fun. In my busiest season as a crazy keynote speaker traveling North America, like it was wild. We don't have, oh, and we had, our nanny had gotten, she was amazing, but she got a full-time job as a hairdresser. That's what she went to school for. So we had no childcare. Teachers are on strike. And I mean, you could just be like, this is the worst months of my life. Like everything, the world is a dumpster fire. And yes, that is all the things I felt. And I felt them. And then it was this moment of like, okay, I cannot change the teacher strike tomorrow or the next day. Like, I
mm,
don't have that much power. Wish I did, but I don't. So then I ask the most powerful question because often we'll stay in a victim mindset. But instead of staying in that, I ask, so now what? So now what? And the cool thing is that we are in control of the so now what? Not the circumstances, but like what is going to be the next actionable thing that I can do, even though this isn't maybe what I would choose. And if I can do that with the death of my son, saying, oh man, like we got a diagnosis that said he's going to die, there's no cure, there's no treatment, he'll die before his first birthday. And yes, I sat, I cried, I was angry, there was grief, sorrow, anguish, you name it. But I didn't want the only time that I had with my child. And what I always share is I'm like, what a gift. I literally got the gift of someone says you have less than 365 days to go. That's it. Like you live differently. And people always say that when they become terminal, they're like, screw it. We're going to go on the trip. We're going to do the thing that we said. I'm going to have the conversations that I didn't want to do. Except we live like we're going to just live forever. And so I think if we lived with this true reality that I'm not guaranteed more days, then I'm going to make the most of this. And that's how I want to show up in my life. Like, if this is all I get, I want the experience to be good. If this is all I get, I want my kids to know that they're loved. If this is all I get, I want my husband to know that even though he drives me crazy and I want to rip his balls off some days, I love him deeply and dearly and I want him to know how I feel. And if this is all I get, and today is the day, then what I do today, I want to do really well. Because what a gift. And the biggest thing is the perspective shift. This work that we do, I know that there's somebody in a hospital room that would give anything to be able to have like one more day in the classroom to like love on some kids, one more day to teach or have a fun lesson. And instead, they're like fighting for their own life or they're fighting for their kids' life. And like, so when I go to open up my dishwasher and you're like, did I just, is this my third load? Because I've had kids in the middle of the house and it's messy and it's dirty. I'm like, I remember begging God for just one more opportunity to open up my dishwasher. I just like, I just want to load my own dishwasher. So when I find myself complaining about the dishwasher, I was like, girl, you pray for this moment, you soak it up. And that has been two powerful tools. So now what? And a perspective shift.
And every day you wake up, I get to have another day. I
Yeah.
get to be here another day. I mean,
Yeah.
your story, I mean, I really encourage people to check out your book, Bringing the Joy, because you explain the whole story with your son. And as you say, that could have gone very differently. You've
Mm.
dedicated your life. You wouldn't be where you are now and doing the things that you're doing had that not have happened. So you're affecting hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the world because
That's a
of your
bold statement.
message.
I feel like the millions and the thousands. I'm like, we'll just stick with hundreds. But thank you for that belief in me. I very much so appreciate it.
But you don't know. You don't
Mhm.
know because you don't know the spread that you have is the message, right? And people want to be inspired. They want to hear these conversations. They want to know that people are doing well in the world and they want to know how, right? People don't want to go to the schools and classrooms where I heard the other day someone said that in the United States in particular, the curriculum is old, quote, quote. It's
Okay.
old, it's antiquated. Somebody else calls it broken. I imagine living in an industry, living in a place where you go to work every day, there's a big story above this big doom and gloom that it's old and broken. Like that doesn't feel good or inspiring, and you're underpaid and undervalued. Like that doesn't feel good. And as you say, that is the reality, but what can we control,
Mm.
right?
I use this example. So if it's broken, you don't like it, then be the one to fix it or stop complaining. And so after our son passed away, 9 months later, the first treatment came to the market. 9 months. And I wasn't trying for my second child. I want to be aware that many people struggle to get pregnant. That was not my challenge. My husband and I looked at each other and we're like, well, and we're having our second child. We just had a child. My first two were 13 months apart. But 9 months later, and you're like, man, if the story was written differently, our lives would look different. And one of the things was is that there was no newborn screening, but there was treatment. And if my son had gotten screened at birth, they screen babies when they're born. Every state and every province is different. It's different around the world. But if there is a treatment for a disease, they'll likely screen it at birth so they can have an effective plan as soon as possible rather than waiting for severe deterioration. So now kids that were born, they can have access to treatment, but the school of thought was, well, we'll just wait till they deteriorate and then they show signs. And we're like, no, no, no. Why don't we find out that they have this before they lose the ability to X, Y, and Z? Let's get them treatment. And we fought government and healthcare and policy and budget and resource constraints for almost 5 years. And I believe it would have happened eventually, but if you are that unhappy with the circumstances, if they are that painful to you, then be part of the change. And that's my invitation. Is I chose to be like, there's a better way to do this. And I had the energy and I have the capacity and I have the passion because I don't want another family to not have the ability to have a full, rich, and abundant life for their child And my child is dead. He's passed away. He's not here. So I have the capacity to go and do this thing. I'm going to go do it. And let me tell you, within the 5 years, I wanted to quit because at every budget meeting, it was, no, we don't have the resources or the budget for it. Well, where is that going to happen? We don't have the capacity for it. And so I just kept, honestly, in every meeting, I was like, so now what? Tell me, so now what, Judy? How much of the budget? What's the budget? What's the number? And so then they would tell me, I'm like, all right, let's go figure it out. But imagine if I would have sat in every meeting, been like, oh, yeah, you've told me that. Okay, so no budget. Okay, we'll just take that. 5 years, we heard no budget, no resources. There's always a solution, but it's like staying in the game long enough to see that. And that's the difference between people that are making changes and people that just accept circumstances.
Well, to your example, if finance is an issue, which it is in this country, right? Teachers are not paid well,
Yeah.
or therapists or anything. There are other, you can open up the idea. Now what? There could be money outside of school, funding opportunities or grants you can apply for. There is money, but it may not come in your salary, your weekly salary. There may be other opportunities, but in that now what opens up a whole other
You got
platform.
teachers posting about their cool ideas, and then brands are partnering with them, so they're making more money. They're also getting paid for view. Like, I think that those are the people that you're like, so stop sitting on the sidelines and watching other people do and just get in the game. And you have to start, and it's going to be bad and it's going to be uncomfortable. But the difference between those that do and actually make it work and those that try and then quit is all around belief and managing your mind. I've done so much research, and where I'm like, that person, how are they? It's because they've managed their mind correctly. It's because when they wanted to quit or got difficult, they had people hold belief, they held belief, they kept showing up and building an evidence bank of what works.
Amazing. And what I love about your story, honestly, is that it's grounded in such incredible grief. So it's not like you're like Susie Sunshine here, like, oh yeah, I just got it going on and be like me. No, like you
Yeah.
came from darkness, right? And so
Yeah.
I think people can relate to that. So we've talked about energy and spirituality and, the brain science and what to do physically, how to get money, all of that. If you were to be given a loudspeaker, Jessica, on the top of the tallest mountain in the world, what would be your advice to all of the families and educators, therapists around the world to bring more joy into their life?
Stop waiting to choose joy. There's too many stupid signs in the world that says choose joy. And then I think in a world that can feel like a dumpster fire and it's not going right, it is your responsibility to bring it. And if we can bring joy to death in a hospital room with four walls, not in our home, not for the life that we bring, that we thought it would be, we can bring joy to the everyday. This is becomes a practice and a discipline and a posture. And that's what I hope for more people. And for us, it was like a dance party. It was like that was the joyful thing. I'm like, find your version of the dance party in the circumstances. And so I think what people will send me stuff like the signs that say choose joy. And I was like, it's cute and it's nice, but please, one, don't buy it for me. But also, it's like choosing joy isn't always there because I think people are waiting for joy to be circumstantial. And I think
Mhm.
it's a responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that so much. Thank you so much for your time. You're
Mhm.
amazing. Keep
Back
doing
at
that.
you. Thank you for having me. I'm like, this was such a fun conversation. And obviously,
Mhm.
feel free to connect with me and check me out on social. That's where I post a lot of what I'm doing. And I try to offer things that will help people live better lives.
Awesome. And where do we find your book and learn about? So you're on Instagram. I've seen you
Yeah.
there, right? And your
Instagram,
book.
LinkedIn, my website, those are kind of
Mhm.
the biggest and easiest places to find me. I have a TikTok. I'm never on it. There's like too much time consuming. I mean, there's so many cool platforms. And you can find my book on Amazon. And yes, it does support me as a local author. I'm self-published, so thank you. And I'm planting the seed. We have book number two, hopefully out by the end of this year. It was supposed to be September, but now it's looking more like November. So stay tuned for that. It's called The Hard Work of Joy, and I'm really looking forward to getting it out into the world.
Amazing. Thank you for your time, Jessica. I so appreciate you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.